Will come to order. Notice of this public hearing was disseminated to all local media outlets via electronic format on November 3rd, with a second notice provided on November the 7th. Notice of this hearing was also made known on the legislature's website. This morning, the committee has two separate hearings, but right now we just have a confirmation hearing, and that's for the executive appointment of Mr. Michael G. Topasna to serve as a member of the Civil Service Commission Board. Good morning, Mr. Topasna. I understand there are others going to testify. Why don't I have them, and then we'll end with your testimony, okay? Joanne, you want to start?
Good morning, Senators. I'm here to testify for Mr. Michael Topasna for the CAC.
Why don't you state your name and...
Okay. My name is Joanne Joyce Babauta Chargloff, San Augustine. I am retired military and a housewife, and I'm here to do my testimony for Michael Topasna.
Thank you, and I guess that's a good segue to, with tomorrow being Veterans Day, to thank both of you as veterans and whoever other veterans are in the room. Our good retired colonel here. A happy Veterans Day, and thank you all for your service to the country. We'll get to yours when we talk to you, but I guess that would be the perfect way to start this. Did you have anything else to just besides say that do you have any other testimony besides just that you want to support it? Okay.
Well, I'm here to support him, yes, and to just basically state that I've known him since he was a young man. I am a few years older, so I know him to be very fair, high standards, with great integrity. So he will definitely be an asset to the CSC and bring some balance into that organization. Thank you.
Thank you. Senator-elect.
Afternoon, good morning. My name is William Castro, and I'm here not representing the Bureau of Statistics and Plans. I'm just here as a fellow parishioner from Santa Teresita Council in favor of Mike Topasna's confirmation to serve on the Board of Commissioners for the Civil Service Commission. I've known him for a little over 31 years. We played football together, and now we serve together in our community church. And I just want to state for the record that he's fair, balanced, and compassionate. And I'm very happy that he'll bring a very common sense lay perspective to those discussions. And he has my full faith and confidence, and that's it.
31 years? Were you playing football when you were 2?
Since I was 6 and a half.
Oh, okay. I also want to note that we have on file and have received a letter of support from Polly Mike. Mr. Palacios.
Good morning. My name is Eric Palacios. I'm a resident of Manila. I work at the Office of the Governor, and I'm also here to testify in support of Mr. Topasna. I've known him for about 3 years now. We actually got to know each other in the Knights of Columbus Manila Council, and we're also brothers in the Young Men's League of Guam. In the relatively short time that I've gotten to know Mr. Topasna, he has shown through many discussions that we've had on issues political, social, economic, that he has absolutely the brain power and the temperament to do a really good job on the CSC board. I believe that his objectivity when he looks at any issue will be a plus to that body, and I believe that he will serve both sides of any grievance fairly, equitably, and respectfully, and I throw my full support for his confirmation. Thank you.
Thank you. Why don't I excuse the three of you, and I think there are 2 more that wanted to testify if they want, or if they're just signing up in support. Did you want to testify? You're more than welcome to. Anybody else? I mean, it can be just a sign of support. You don't have to testify. So, thank you very much. And just state your name and.
Okay. So my name is Shannon Topasna. I'm the daughter of Michael Topasna, and I want to testify for my father. And I just want you guys to know that I'm not only saying this because I'm his kid, but he's very understanding and compassionate, and he does not support anything unjust. He will seek to do things the right way, and even if it doesn't benefit him, he'll still do what he can for others. Every time, even when we stress him out. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Mr. P.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman. My name is Benny Pinala. I'm the Deputy Director at Guam Behavioral Health and Wellness Center. I'm here to testify on behalf and in support of Mr. Topasna's nomination to the Civil Service Commission. I've known him for a couple of years. Anybody who's met him will find out that he's bigger than life, not only in size, but in his heart as well. I have known him for a couple of years. I'm also a brother of his in the Young Men's League of Guam, and this man brings to the table quite a bit of skill sets that the people of Guam will benefit from, and those that he will be serving if confirmed. And I happily endorse him and ask that the legislature please support his nomination. Thank you.
Thank you. Why don't I excuse the two of you and have him, Mr. Topasna, be center stage. Michael.
Good morning there, Mr. Senator Anna. Half a day, Vice Speaker Cruz. For the record, I am Michael Gofigan Topasna, currently residing in Derito. I am here to introduce myself, and if there's any questions you may have about my nomination to serve on the Board of Commissions for the Guam Civil Service Commission, please feel free to ask me. I am a father, retired Army veteran, student, and volunteer. I have 3 children, one of whom just enlisted yesterday to the United States Navy, my daughter Shannon. Our family's tradition continues to serve to protect our nation and our island. My sister's retired in the Army also, and myself, I have nephews and nieces in the Army and Air Force. My daughter just joined the Navy. I am currently pursuing a degree in the University of Guam, business management with a concentration in tourism. I believe that the best form of leadership is leadership by example, and my daughter also is attending University of Guam. With that said, I am also active in my parish and serve as Deputy Grand Knight for the Knights of Columbus, Council 13373, Santa Teresita Council. Second, I expressed the desire and to serve our local government, and was quite pleased to learn from a fellow Knight, Senator-elect, about ways to continue to help serve the island, the people, and the Civil Service Commission Board came up, and I offered my services, and I'm glad that I was even accepted, appointed. I am committed to supporting the goal of the Commission, which is to provide quality and efficient service in order to promote a healthy merit system. I have dedicated my life to promoting and defending our democracy, which is built upon the concept of treating people fairly and equally. Our democracy and our government also guarantees the right to speak out and appeal an unjust decision, or the right to register complaints about our government. In closing, I believe that my contribution on the board and our community as Christian humility, common sense, and a compassionate but fair perspective. For what it's worth, I am not registered with any political party. Rather, I am a God-fearing man who will continue to defend the everyday Guam residents' right to fair and equal treatment, to appeal, and to register complaints about our government. Thank you.
Thank you very much for accepting the nomination, and I want to thank you for the time you spent in the office discussing your nomination. You were very modest in your presentation. I was especially impressed with the work that you did with the Wounded Warrior Program. That melted my heart, and
Thank you.
with tomorrow being Veterans Day, I really do think that we all owe a debt of gratitude to not only you, but especially the men and women that you served in the Wounded Warrior program that you described to me. And I was happy that you understood that this commission is going to probably cause you to be spending more time reading than any of your classes at the university, but that you were willing to do it, and for as little as stipend as they get. But with your background, I was very happy that you're with your nomination, and we'll see to it that this committee report is completed at the earliest possible time for action.
Thank you.
I want to thank you for being willing to serve on the Civil Service Commission, and understanding the responsibilities that you're going to have.
Yes.
And the fact that there is such a huge backlog that they meet 3 times a week. And so I don't think you even have classes that meet 3 times a week at the university. So, if you're willing to do it, I'm willing to move this forward. So thank you very much.
Thank you, sir.
For your willingness to do this. Senator Addy, do you wish to?
Yeah, Mr. Topasna, thank you very much for accepting the nomination. I was looking at your DD 214. What's the SEK separation code?
SEK separation code.
Yeah, it just shows that here. I get you retired.
Yeah,
you officially retired from the military.
Yes.
And the separation code assigned to that separation was SEK.
To the best of my knowledge, I am medically retired.
Okay.
Yeah, so I would say that would be the code.
Okay.
I'm not too sure the
Okay.
SEK code is.
All right. Yeah, I've never seen that code before. I presume, have you had any discussions with any of the commissioners that are currently serving or have served before from the
No,
state?
I have not had any discussion. I've just gained extra knowledge through the websites, and even through their last year's budget request. It states everything that's notable in the Civil Service Commission.
Well, apparently then in your meeting with the Vice Speaker, he's at least made you aware that those commissioners there do spend an inordinate amount of time. They meet like about 3 times a month, or 3 times a week. Well, it's even worse than I thought. And then in between meetings, there's a lot of reading. So it's really quite involved. What's your position on unions?
Unions? I would say the way I could relate it, it's not necessarily a union, but it serves for the rights of people, whether they were done wrong, they're there to defend, or they were done right, they're there to let them know. Straight up, unions are to back up the employees.
Okay.
Yeah.
So safe to say that you're pro-union?
If it's the right thing.
Yeah. I only ask that because, of course, a lot of the civil service cases come to the commission because employees feel that they were unjustly treated by management, and that's where they try and get redress. So I'm just kind of trying to figure out where you'll be coming from, or
Yes.
what's your inclination.
Yeah, under review of their complaints, I would see for myself, at least for my conscience, whether they were done wrong or right. So
Okay. Now, I notice you work for DECA.
yes, as a cashier, yes.
Right. Now, are they aware that you're being appointed to this commission, and if there might be a conflict with?
No, 2013 was when I resigned because I went to my school.
Okay.
Yes.
All right. I didn't see that part in the thing. Okay, fine.
Yes.
Great. And congratulations to your daughter for
Yes.
stepping forward and stepping up and
Yes,
investing.
that is a great step, actually.
Oh, yeah.
Yes.
Great. Excellent. I don't have any further questions, Mr. Vice Speaker, and I certainly wish you all the luck, and
Yes.
I tell you, I commend you for wanting to step into this, because it does take a lot of time.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, without any further questions, and the committee will recess until 10:30, when we will have the oversight hearing on the health insurance issue. Okay?
Yes, sir.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Senators. Thank you.
Good morning. This hearing conducted by the Committee on Appropriations and Adjudications will now come back to order. This morning we are going to have what has been termed as an oversight on the health insurance contract and the issues surrounding it. But as you can see from the number of chairs that I've placed up here, I really would like for it to be more of an open discussion with everybody involved, including, and I want to thank the insurance companies for coming this morning, because I'm hoping that after today's discussion that we will have some idea on how to be able to improve the system so that we can make it more economical and beneficial to the people of Guam. At least that's my hope from this. The election was 2 days ago. We now have to plan for the future. Let's please try to help each other, and especially help me and the legislature address how to be able to provide health insurance to our government employees and our retirees at the most economical, and maybe even give me some ideas on how I can at some point do either managed health care or universal health care. So why don't I invite some people up? The Director of Administration, Christine, can you take a seat? Who's here from BBMR? Oh, Mr. Calvo, please. Thank you. Who wants to come up from the insurance companies? Whoever wants to come up. Jerry, Frank, please. You can slide down, yeah, because you got the air conditioner. You can move over. It's the air conditioning, I know. Okay. Let me just lay the framework with an short opening statement. The Government of Guam health insurance contract is the largest government contract, Government of Guam contracts, and the taxpayers pay for it on an annual basis. This contract provides Government of Guam employees and retirees and their families with health insurance coverage annually. The health insurance negotiation team is made up of all three branches of government, from the Director of Administration, the Director of DISID, the Director of BBMR, employee representatives of the judicial branch appointed by the Chief Justice, employee representative from the legislative branch appointed by the Speaker, the Superintendent of Education or a designee, a retiree who is a member of the Government of Guam Retirement Fund, members of the General Fund appointed by the Governor, and chairpersons of the Legislative Committee on Health and Appropriations or their designees. This health insurance negotiating team, since the enactment of Public Law 31-197, issues a request for proposal to attract interested health insurance carriers to propose both a health insurance for all Government of Guam employees and its retirees as the sole exclusive provider, and a proposal to provide as one of three health insurance carriers sharing health insurance coverage as a non-exclusive carrier. There is absolutely no mandate that requires a non-exclusive contract that provided choice to employees and retirees. The negotiations team then negotiates the cost based, at least this is my understanding. The negotiation team then negotiates the cost based on utilization and cost, information and data, and it is statutorily mandated to be provided to the negotiation teams and the general public, and rates the top three proposals for both exclusive and non-exclusive contracts and begins negotiations on cost. Once negotiations are completed, there is a health insurance exclusive proposal with one health insurance carrier, and two, a health insurance non-exclusive proposal with three health insurance carriers that is then forwarded to the Governor for his selection and approval. Even after the Governor selects either the exclusive or non-exclusive contract, the Governor, through the Director of Administration, then determines how much the Government of Guam will pay for the employee and retiree, for the employee and and how much the employee will pay for, the splits. Since FY 2014, the fiscal year in which the exclusive and non-exclusive contract was forwarded to the Governor, each fiscal year, savings have been estimated if the Governor had selected the exclusive option. The law did not ever require the Governor to choose a non-exclusive contract. It gave him a choice to choose either, and the most expensive option was chosen. Our estimate, from the memos that we've received, we've estimated that it could be as much as anywhere from 55 to 75 million could have been saved over the last several years from if the exclusive had been chosen. Things seem to have turned for the worse in 2016 when retiree health insurance premiums increased twofold from 24 million in FY14 and 15 to nearly 36 million in 2016 and projected in 2017. In FY 2016, the Governor had requested an appropriation for retiree health insurance of 24 million, and the legislature appropriated that same amount. Unfortunately, the selection of non-exclusive contract coupled with unprecedented increases in the premiums for retirees led to a shortfall of nearly 20 million just for the retiree health insurance. In FY 2017, the legislature appropriated the most this government has ever appropriated to retiree health insurance, totaling $30 million. If the governor had selected a exclusive health insurance contract, this amount would have been more than enough to cover our retiree health insurance. With the selection of the non-exclusive carrier, this government has foregone $21 million in savings and is now faced with a potential shortfall of retiree health premiums. I want to thank the health insurance companies for coming, and just so we can start this off, I had a couple of questions. Well, we understand that you haven't been paid. Is that correct? Did either one of you wish to make an opening statement? I know Take Care, that's not here, did provide a written statement.
Well, we all provided a written testimony, Senator.
Okay, can I just ask a few questions then? We'll include your testimony in how much, can I ask how much, or you're owed?
Well, we're the smallest of the three carriers for as far as enrollment. So we're owed roughly about $380,000 or thereabouts. That's for FY16, and that's the government of Guam's contribution. So the retiree contribution has been paid, but it's the government's contribution that hasn't been paid.
So you're owed $380 from the government.
Yeah.
And we're owed about 13.5 from the government. 13.5 million.
How many months or how many pay periods does that cover?
It's about 6.
For the retirees, yeah, it's about, no, it's more than that. Yeah,
Since May.
yeah. So it's
Since,
about
so
4 months, 5 months,
So the last time you guys got paid was in May?
around that time. Yeah. Well, they trickle down, because for the difference between the defined benefit program and the defined contribution, they trickle down. The defined contributions, they come from the different agencies, as you know, so they trickle down. But yeah, the overall is about 13.5.
Was this the first fiscal year that you had this problem of non-payment of premium?
Senator, I've been doing government of Guam since about 1994 when I was with our good friends of Moylan's in here. I don't think we have a single year where we have not been owed by the government of Guam. It's been, as you know, the people that sell to the hospital often come here to ask you to help bail them out. I don't think there's a vendor in the entire island that could say that they're being paid promptly by the government of Guam at any time.
Have you been paid, but in the previous fiscal years you've gotten paid?
Well,
paid off.
Yeah, but those were late too, So like I said, I don't think there's a vendor in the entire island of Guam that can say categorically that the government of Guam is the best payer of any kind.
Yeah, we didn't have this. I don't recall that we had this problem in FY15. That was our first year in GovGuam, and they've been late, but it's been paid. Unlike today, where you're into the new fiscal year now, 2 months, and you're still owed back pay for FY16.
Has there been anything that has changed that you can see that has caused this delay, or is there anything that you're aware of? Have you been notified as to what is the cost of it? I mean the cause, not the cost.
Well, we did receive a letter from, I believe, DOA at the time, the controller, informing us of late contribution payments due to funding shortfalls. So we were notified of that, and to date are still waiting for some status as to when we can get paid for that premium that is still owed from the government of Guam. So that's where we're at. We've had meetings with DOA, I believe, not too long ago about getting a status update as to when we can expect payment. And ours is small compared to, Frank, he's about 13 million. Ours is about 300 and some thousand.
And under the process, the RFP process, you guys have to submit your proposal by a certain date. What's that date?
It's changed, but it's typically around the second week of May. That would be a very consistent amount of time.
And
May, June.
Yeah.
when has your negotiations ended, or at least?
It was in June. I think it was either late June or July sometime. But our proposals would have included what our cost proposal would be on top of the benefits. And then we're ranked based on that proposal and then called to negotiate first on the exclusive level and then the non-exclusive level. So I think we ended in July sometime.
The end of July.
Yeah.
And if I may, consistently throughout the years, it's been a July negotiation. Yeah, so that has been consistently throughout the years.
And when have you been notified of the selection of, or at least the determination, the announcement of the decision by the governor that it's going to be exclusive or non-exclusive, or what date? Not exactly, but about when are you notified?
It's late August.
Yeah, it's around August.
Late August, yeah.
And when does open enrollment start?
It's in the month of September, which is prior to the effective day, October 1st. So.
And in order to prepare for open enrollment, I understand you guys need to know what kind of program you're going to have. Is the date that you're notified as to whether or not it's exclusive or non-exclusive, does that give you enough time to prepare for open enrollment?
Well, as far as I'm concerned, no. And we operate, at least this year, we operated as if we were selected or we would be one of the offers. And so we prepare benefits and open enrollment packets as if we were selected without receiving official written notification that we were selected or have been.
And for our case, Senator, again, it changes every year. The timelines of negotiations have changed. For instance, as you recall, we had this year a brand new director that needed to come and get acquainted with the process. We have consultants that come off island. But I recall that when we were together, when former governor decided to not accept multi-cover in those days as the health plan, that negotiations were extended, and sometimes you're only giving 3 days notice. So it changes, it varies with time.
You mentioned, Jerry, that you needed more time. How much time do you believe would be appropriate to prepare?
Yeah, I mean, the process, the time frame now is really ridiculous as far as a business is concerned. And we're a small business, so maybe our competitors are much larger, they have much more resources. But I think the process should end around April. That's when you should submit your RFP. You should negotiate the next 30 days, and you should wrap this up around June. Give us 60 days to prepare for open enrollment, the printed materials. Most of these printed materials are done haphazardly because they have to be done quickly to meet open enrollment, but you should, GovGuam, as big as it is, should actually end the enrollment process, not the enrollment process, but the negotiation and the preparation process around June, no later than June. Give us at least 60 days to prepare for that, allow for a 1-month open enrollment, and then allow for another month to process your enrollment information so that you can be effective the next date, October 1st. Right now, you go September 1st or September 30th, no days to prepare, to process these enrollment forms for an effective October 1st. So you have your members, your employees and your retirees going to the pharmacy, going to the doctors without cards, having the doctors call us for verification of benefits. Some of them have switched plans when you have this option of multiple choices now. They go from one plan to the other. The doctor still has the old enrollment information, the old plan information, and you're going to have that confusion. I deal with two large groups, two commercial groups. United Airlines, we wrap up enrollment in October. They give us 1 month to process enrollment. They're effective January 1. I have that whole month of December to prepare for information after enrollment has completed. But the way GovGuam does it today is really haphazard, and I don't believe the statute calls for that. I think you need to clean up the process, simplify it, and make it less cumbersome for carriers to enter the market.
You do realize that the statute says that it's supposed to be transmitted and completed by July 31st. And we tried to take your 60 days into account. It just hasn't been complied with, unfortunately. Please.
Okay. Well, we in previous discussions with the Government of Guam Legislative Health Committee, we have recommended that the process also need to be changed. I mean, for instance, we all have to submit binders that are about 17, 18 binders of about 2 or 3 trees of information because we're killing trees. And basically, it's a process that already from that perspective is already flawed. You got to provide information, whereas with the federal government, for instance, a simple 5-page letter is the entire renewal process. Simple 5-page letter. With the government of Guam, you got to validate that, yes, that you are an entity that are in business in Guam. You got to provide your NAIC statements. You got to provide your audited financial statements. You got to answer like a set of 60 to 70 questions. Then the binders become about 2 inches thick. You got to provide to the entire negotiating committee and send trio filing to the negotiating. With the federal government, as big as they are, a 5-page letter is all it takes for the renewal. So the process, and we have suggested to many times to you, senators, that we ought to look at the process and change it so you can fit the deadlines that are in the law today.
What other recommendations do you have?
Well,
as
we have a
relates
bunch
to-
of recommendations in our letter, Senator, but I can go to the last page and tell you what recommendations we have. For instance, one of the concerns that I understand the committee has today is the budget, that you're concerned about the fact that it is also late for the Guam legislature to understand what the impact to the budget process will be for health insurance. Well, so we recommend, why don't you set up a dollar-specific amount contribution per employee, per class 1, class 2, class 3, class 4. So that way you will know ahead of time what the government of Guam is going to spend for active retirees per class, number 1. Number 2, the only variable that will occur in that process will be the number of people that ultimately will sign up. But it will be a significant less variable to the government of Guam today than what it is in the future than it is today. So we recommend that. We set up a minimum amount of benefits, so that way those benefits don't change through time. The negotiating committee, for instance, gets a lot of requests from each of the areas that they represent. The retirees would like to add an additional benefit. Well, those additional benefits increase costs. So if you can set up and develop a standard level of benefits that will be priced, you will have more consistency in your budget process, and you will, whether you have 1 or you have 10 insurance companies providing the benefits, your cost to the government of Guam will be budgeted ahead of time.
You know, I think we just received your copy of this.
Correct.
So I think for the listening audience's purpose, maybe I should allow both of you the opportunity to read your opening statement.
And I will let
We would then because then it would make things a lot clearer about what your suggestions are. And I really appreciate that, because I am trying to improve the system if we can at some way. So,
Jerry, go ahead.
go ahead, Jerry.
Happy day, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee. Thank you for the invitation and opportunity to submit testimony on the Government of Guam Group Health Insurance Program. My name is Jerry Chrysostimo. I serve as the Plan Administrator for Netcare Life and Health Insurance Company. We are one of 3 health carriers offered to GovGuam employees and retirees since FY 2015. This is our 3rd year in the Government of Guam Group Health Insurance Program. And I just want to make 3 comments. One is simplify the process. The RFP and negotiations process really needs to be transparent, simplified, and less cumbersome. We expend too much time and money under the current process, which is utterly ridiculous. Although we made the business decision to 3 years ago to re-enter the GovGuam market, the process has not changed dramatically over the years. I have been involved in this process dating back to 1982 when I was employed with FHP, and I was intimately involved with the annual GovGuam negotiations at that time. Nothing has really changed. I recommend a complete overhaul of the process. We are involved in numerous RFP programs for large employers, including the federal government, and nothing is as cumbersome as the GovGuam program. The second is pay your bills. The current process allows both administration and legislative representation to sit on the negotiations committee, as you know. This should provide ample and consistent information required to properly fund what has been negotiated by the carriers between the legislature and the administration. But your bills need to be paid as time has run out. I am owed about $380,000 in retiree contributions from GovGuam for FY 2016, which is now being subsidized by my other paying customers. We need this resolved urgently, as I may be forced to begin sending out collection letters to your retirees insured by Netcare for claims that have already been paid, of which no premiums have been submitted. And then the third is, we talk about cost. Go self-funded. As a group as large as GovGuam really has no business being fully insured. You really need to seriously consider moving to a self-funded program. You spend a lot of money, as I understand, with a program conducted by Lewis and Ellis, as you know, back in several years back, of which thousands of dollars have been spent on that study and that report. You need to take it seriously. That study strongly recommended that GovGuam consider a self-funded program for its health insurance plan. This makes good business sense. GovGuam can better control its expenses by funding your own claims and determining your own coverage requirements. A third-party administrator can be contracted, such as an insurance company like any of us, can be contracted to administer the program for so much less than what you are paying today under a fully insured program. So I recommend that a self-funded proposal be a requirement in the RFP proposal and process for FY18 and forward. And while we are in the business of providing affordable and quality health care coverage to consumers in both the public and the private markets, we actually have no preference whether the proposal requires an exclusive or non-exclusive offer. Providing GovGuam employees and retirees with choices in health insurance is good, but it does come with a price that may be unaffordable to you today. So we look at each RFP offer as a potential business opportunity to provide what you're looking for: quality, affordable, and accessible healthcare coverage to your clients. Thank you for the opportunity to submit this testimony.
Thank you very much. Frank?
Thank you, Senators. We also start our letter by Dear Vice Speaker Cruz. Thank you for inviting us to provide our views pertinent to the Government of Guam Health Insurance Program. At the onset, we would like to point out that our company has provided benefits and services to the Government of Guam employees and retirees for 16 continuous years. And our views are based on our experience through this period and our industry knowledge of practices of state employee and retirees across the nation. In several of our past testimonies on this subject, we stated that the process in place prior to the fiscal year 2011, the RFP and bid process, were appropriate, worked, and there was not significant issues with that process. The process allows for the renewal of health insurance benefits through a bid process and the new entries through a RFP. Market forces and changes in medical utilization caused the government of Guam market to reach high levels of adverse selection, resulting in some insurance carriers abandoning the market. These market forces are similar to what is being experienced today by the health insurance exchanges across our nation, and they will gyrate back and forth depending on medical inflation factors that are derived mainly from the changes in the cost of delivering medical care and the extent of medical benefits provided. Even during the years when our company by default became the sole provider to the government of Guam, we stated that market forces should be the best barometer and the best determining factor to allow health insurance providers into the government of Guam market. Despite the high medical inflation, and we attach, and we gave you some attachments. These are recent articles that came out on the Guam Post. Despite the medical inflation, high medical inflation that is being experienced in Guam today, the medical rates charged and paid by the employer, the government of Guam, at least for the active employees, are fairly consistent with what they were being charged 13 years ago in 2013. And we gave you a comparison of rates as well. It is also worth to mention that the benefits has significantly and dramatically improved, especially after 2011 with the introduction of mandated benefits by the Affordable Care Act. GovGuam provides one of the smallest dollar contributions towards its active employees' health insurance coverage when compared with most other states and jurisdictions across the nation. And I included a report that you must be very familiar with because the report comes from the National Conference of State Legislatures, and it tells you how much other states are contributing on behalf of the active employees. Changes to the offerings for retirees have also been made recently with the introduction of an RSP program, which also has resulted in additional increases to the overall government of Guam health insurance budget. The actual costs of the health plans offered to GovGuam today are significantly lower than what it is offered to similar state employees in Hawaii and other states across the nation, as shown in the report that I referenced prior. The rates are actually higher today. As the rates for state employees are actually higher today, as the report shows. The government of Guam has also implemented a participating medical agreement contract, which reference the self-funded program that Jerry mentioned earlier. That's basically like self-funded. You are limiting your losses and you're limiting your costs, and you get a participation rebate. So in regards to self-funding, you kind of have a self-funded program already, and it provides rebates to the government of Guam if premiums exceed a certain medical loss ratio threshold. In essence, the participating contract protects the government of Guam regardless of the amount of rates charged. Some of the cost factors that have impacted the government of Guam health insurance budget in recent years include the following. Increasing participation, we see that compared to previous years, today versus 5 years ago and versus 8 years ago, you have higher participation of both active and retired employees. Medical inflation factors, as demonstrated by the reports that we provided, have increased dramatically on Guam. The prevalence of chronic conditions such as heart disease, cancer, diabetes, and end-stage kidney disease is also a problem. Significant increases in drug costs, and we just gave you on a slide of, for instance, the EpiPen that has gone from $100, and that's only to show you the relation of cost in pharmaceuticals that has gone through the roof. EpiPen went from about $100 to $600, and there are significant increases not only on generics but also on brand drugs. And the new drugs that are coming to the market are coming with rates of $90,000, which you're familiar with the hepatitis C, Sovaldi, and others that have come to the market at the rate of $90,000 per treatment. Higher first, for the government of Guam specifically, the PPO $1,500 is no longer a deductible plan. For all intent and purposes, that plan has become a first dollar benefit because it has significant first dollar benefits that only co-payments apply. Aging population. We show in our reports that the overall enrolled population in government of Guam has aged Greater access to medical technology. We have introduced new medical technology on Guam thanks to new entries like the Guam Regional Medical Center. We have significant new technology at Dr. Burke's Place. Higher number of cancer cases. You've seen throughout the island the fundraisers and everything else that go along with the cancer cases. The additional plan that was introduced for retirees, that also increased your costs. And the new added benefits that are added through the committee year in, year out. Most of the aforementioned cost factors are not unique to GovGuam, and they present challenges to state budgets across the nation and to national budgets across the world. We anticipate cost trends to continue in an upward movement locally, especially with the implementation of increased fees at GMHA and continued introduction of additional diagnostic medical technology to the island, the impact of new cost structures at the new hospital, and the cost of providing care to our aging population. GovGuam could implement a few changes that would allow for better planning of its healthcare budgets, regardless of the number of plans participating in the program. These changes include, but are not limited to, the following. Set a specific dollar amount contribution per class for both active and retired employees. The above will allow for budget planners to have better estimates on the costs, and the only variable will be the number of participants. Allow for changes in the dollar contributions annually based on inflation factors. In other words, set the dollar amounts, but allow it to be increased based on inflation factors. Develop a minimum standard of benefits and don't deviate for it. And lastly, but not least, with the increases that are being seen at GMH, we suggest that if you want to benefit the government of Guam health insurance program, allow payments of our claims to be based on what Medicare reimburses GMH. We believe the aforementioned could stabilize the budgetary process for GovGuam without affecting the number of offerings to the employees and retirees. Providing options to employees and retirees is consistent with what most states and jurisdictions provide today to their employees. While benefits may be the same for plans, the access to medical providers and the offerings for drug coverage could widely affect the coverage to individuals. These two factors made the analysis of any health plan offerings difficult to quantify, as the most economical plan may not necessarily translate into the most beneficial programs for the active and retired employees of the government of Guam. We thank you for allowing us to participate, and we provided a bunch of documents to supplement the letter.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that. And please, the rest of my colleagues, I know I have my procurement specialist sitting next to me. So the suggestions that you're making, Jerry, as it relates to the both of you, I'm hoping that Senator Tom Atta will chime in, and the others, I'm sure Senator Espaldon, if there's any questions of these two as it's coming up, as they make mention, please go ahead and just chime in and ask a question. I just wanted a couple of things. Frank, you ended with discussion about the retirees. In the last 2 years, how have the retirees, that's the big spike. Because for all the GovGuam active employees, we actually provide for them in the budget. It's a lump sum amount as part of their cost, the benefits for each employee. So it's within the amount given to the departments. The only thing that's separate really is the amount for retiree, for the amount appropriated for the retirees. Do you wish to make a comment about whether or not the premiums that are being paid by the retirees are justified when you take into account their claims?
Well, clearly that population is the older population, and as you and I now know, Senator, it seems that once you turn over 50, it's like everything in the world hurts, and now you got to utilize more medical services. Not only that, but even the mandates for preventive services, that alone, after the age of 50, becomes very expensive. For instance, and it's very good, that we got to have colonoscopies if you're over 50, diagnostic colonoscopies to ensure that you don't have colon cancer. So the cost for retirees increase. But one of the things that we noticed for the government of Guam, and another one of the suggestions, Senator, is that you are subsidizing now for what we understand, and I think that Paula could clarify that better for us, Paula Blas, that you subsidize Medicare Part A in some instances, Medicare Part B premiums, Medicare Part D premiums, and you fully subsidize the new RSP program for the retirees. And they also have the choices of either one of the two other options. So you have now significant subsidies to that population, and I don't think that the premiums that are being charged just by the health insurance alone are part of what may be construed as a problem. Is that you now providing significant premium subsidies to that population, and that's one of the reasons why that budget could be a little bit underfunded. If you're providing subsidies for Medicare Part A in some instances, the premiums for Medicare Part B, the premiums for Medicare Part D, and the options that they have with GovGuam. So that's one of the things that could be affecting your budgets too.
Jerry, do you?
Yeah, I mean, I agree with Frank in that comment. In addition to that, I think when we submit the RFP, we're given the claims data for all carriers. So we look at both retirees and actives as they're split up. So we look at claims experience for dating back a couple of years if that information is provided. So we take into account what that claims experience and that loss ratio has been probably for that segment of your population, the retirees. So the rates will be driven obviously by the experience for the last 2 or 3 years. So it may be that in addition to those that have Medicare and they're subsidized, that RSP plan and I believe the retiree plans that retirees have chosen, either the PPO 1500 or the HSA, that's heavily subsidized now by GovGuam. And so that has probably factored into your, if it's an underfunded budgetary issue. But the rates that we've developed take into account those different scenarios and those situations.
Mr. Crisostomo, in the last part of your testimony, you stated, we are in the business of providing affordable and quality health coverage to consumers. We have no preference whether the proposal requires an exclusive or non-exclusive offer. And I can understand that statement that the insurance companies may have no preference for one or the other because you're going to charge the government whatever you're going to need to charge to cover your costs. But it seems that the real question is which is really the more economical way to go for the government, to basically go exclusive or non-exclusive. And I can understand why it's a lot more expensive if it's non-exclusive, because now you have a smaller consumer base to work with to spread that cost. But I guess that's really not up to the insurance companies, right? That's for the government of Guam to decide whether it be winner takes all or we're going to spread the wealth. and so it's really, it seems that the reason that we're here today is really to answer that question. To ask that question of Department of Administration as to why do we make the choice? Why do we choose the non-exclusive, despite the fact that we know that it's costing the government $21 million more, or however much?
The decision to choose exclusive or non-exclusive doesn't rest with the Department of Administration. Basically, through the negotiating committee, we prepare the briefing memo to supposedly the governor, but since he's recused himself, it's to the lieutenant governor, and we present both options. In that briefing memo, we identify the costs, we identify the benefit that is going to be garnered from going exclusive versus non-exclusive, and that decision rests with him. So it's not the Department of Administration.
See, so it's the Lieutenant Governor that decided to then choose an option that is about $21 million more to the government of Guam.
That's
that
correct.
solely rests on the Lieutenant Governor?
Correct. But prior to 2014, we always chose the non-exclusive option. During that time, I have letters and bills that were submitted that required the negotiating committee to do a non-exclusive. And I do have a letter from Senator Ben Pangilinan back in June 9, 2011. And if you will just allow me to read what was sent to the Department of Administration. It's a 4-page letter, but in the page 3, it says, decision to elect one vendor for the Government of Guam Health Insurance Program. It says, I also take issue with your current decision to only select one vendor to provide health insurance. This unilateral policy call is your role as chairwoman of the health insurance negotiation team, completely destroys the enacted policies of this government to promote competition within the GHIP. After Public Law 3124 was signed by the governor and the working documents of the negotiation team were provided to me, I discovered that the appointed representative of the legislature, Mr. Chris Budasi, had written several letters to you outlining strategies to implement for multiple carriers of the program. It goes on, but it basically says the government of Guam is boxed into an exclusive contract by virtue of having such a large number of high-risk enrollees. This death spiral has forced 2 carriers out of the program in less than 10 years, leaving the government, the employees, and the retirees with no leverage to negotiate. It goes on, and then basically at the end, it requests that you cancel this RFP and consider reconsideration of the general procedures and further inquiries with insurance carriers about a sliced account approach, multiple carrier contract, prior to issuing the RFP. So that during this time, and as time went on, there was also the law that was enacted in 2012, which required the negotiation committee to entertain non-exclusive proposals. Prior to this time, we were only entertaining exclusive. So it was through the legislature and through the attacks that were happening on the department that we ended up going this route and providing that option.
Thank you. And maybe we should maybe we should allow him to rest in peace and just move forward from here.
Right.
Because really the numbers speak for themselves. And if the government has identified what are the benefits or the medical coverages that are to be provided, and the offerers are basically willing to provide that at a certain cost, then, and I think this is probably a case where everybody says, well, competition is best, because then, and I guess in this case, to offer it to the lowest bidder, but it seems like we're trying to accommodate everyone, and I appreciate that you're bringing up that letter and all that. But still, the bottom line today is, if you were going to put it out in a bid, you normally would, and if it meets all the specifications as being asked for, we award it to the lowest bidder. And in this case, by going the other way, we have basically spending millions of dollars more.
And I don't think anybody would argue that point. Economies of scales tells you that when you combine to a single vendor, of course it's going to be cheaper. But I wanted to state for the record, it wasn't a decision by DOA or the administration to provide that opportunity to split it up. It was exclusive.
I understand, Ms. Baleto, and it just comes across like it's a hot potato. It wasn't us. It was him.
And I see the public auditor wishes to comment.
There is a question. Well, first of all, let me just respond to the subsidy that was mentioned. Yes, that number has gone up. It has gone up from about and I've been watching that number. That number has gone up from about $800,000 to $1 million. Now, last year in FY 2015, it was about $2 million. So, as more retirees reach that age, that number will continue to grow. But the question, and I've had this conversation with with Christine about this, is, and I have to say my knowledge of the healthcare is limited, but the concern that I keep on hearing is that the pools are segregated. The retiree health care claims is separated from the active pools. And I really would like to get clarification on that, because in insurance, you do know you're going to have high risk, low risk, medium risk, and you want to combine the entire pool together so that the low risk employees offset the high risk, and so you're not paying exclusively just for high risk. And in talking with Christine, it appears that the pools are segregated, and that's why we do have that higher cost as to coming together altogether, meaning one pool for the entire government of Guam, and therefore the overall claims scenario becomes a lower risk overall to the government of Guam. We have this law that says a retiree shall not pay more than an active employee. That's why you see a little bit of the skewing. But likewise, if the pool is combined so that the claims of the retiree are in the same pool as the claims of the active employees who are supposed to be on average healthier and therefore underutilizing their health insurance, that's where you have a more balanced pool. And that's the area that I'm seeking clarification on, is in the negotiation process. Are the pools segregated so it shows that retirees are using a disproportionate share of the benefits compared to active employees? Now, fortunately, as an example, fortunately for me, I'm an active employee, but I don't use that much. Thank God I'm healthy. And that claim, that underutilization, and there are going to be a number of us who underutilize, can then be offset. And so that's the clarification I'm seeking. And according to Christine, she says the pools are segregated. Therefore, GovGuam is paying a disproportionately higher cost for retirees when it really shouldn't if it's just one pool. And that's the area that I'm seeking clarification.
And maybe we should get clarification for all the members, because
Okay.
is that statutorily mandated that the pools be
No,
separated?
actually, I spent some time researching why it changed, because prior to 2008, FY 2008, it was a combined premium request.
Right.
And then thereafter, it was separated between active and retiree. So according to my staff, back in FY 2008, Aon Insurance, who did our retiree medical actuarial evaluation for that year, provided the committee and the director at that time advice relative to GASB 45, which is the quantification of OPEB into the financial statements. And one of the things that was pointed out to them is that the regulations, how they will affect, is to force a separation of active and retiree benefit plans. Now, I know. I checked with
OPEB is not saying that. It's whatever's your total cost. That's not what OPEB is saying, to segregate.
Yes, I understand that. And I cannot explain the decision in 2008, but I have since clarified with my staff that that is not what it is requiring.
Right.
And so it's something that we will be trying to change going forward.
Okay.
And that was the other.
I just want to make that clear. It's not statutorily
No.
mandated.
No.
It was a
No.
misinterpretation of GASB.
Correct.
And it's going to be corrected
Correct.
administratively.
Going forward, yes.
And that was one of our conversations yesterday, Mr. Speaker, that I asked, question, why? Why are we doing this? Why are we doing that? Where does it say that in law? Because GovGuam, with more than 12,000 employees overall, we really should get a very good rate. Because there is that economies of scale. One of the concern also, Senator, that I have, and I don't remember which government of Guam agency, somehow in the legislation, and I will get back to you later on, there is one GovGuam agency that is not part of the insurance pool.
Judiciary.
Judiciary pulled away.
Judiciary pulled out.
And again, the question becomes, is it all for one for all? Why are we bifurcating? Why are we making different governments? Because again, the economies of scale, not just, there's another autonomous entity that also has its own, and I have to find out that's another policy decision that this legislature and this has to make. Do we want one plan for all government of Guam employees, or do we want a different plan because the judiciary is this, and so on? Because even the retirees, when we bring them out, do we segregate the retirees from the judiciary versus the retirees of the rest of the government of Guam? This should be a cohesive pool, and the bigger the pool, normally, unless the better the negotiation, the better the premiums, and so on. So that's another issue that we really need to look at again.
Okay. Unfortunately, it is statutory that allows them to be separated. Yes.
May I offer a clarification? The pools were combined up until the fiscal year 2007, but and we will price pools whether they're combined or whether they're separated. But the only clarification that I would like to offer for this body today is that when you combine them, please expect that the premiums for the retirees were actually going to increase, because if the utilization of the retirees is here and the utilization of the active is here, when you bring those premiums down, this is going to rise. It's not different, no. So you are, at the end of the day, you're going to end up technically paying the same dollar amount, whether you combine them or you put them together, because we are currently pricing based on the utilization of both pools. But at the end, when you combine them, if you are spending, let's say, $1 for an active and you are spending $2 for the retirees, when you combine them, you're going to spend $1.50, right? Because you divide between the two, but now you spread the risk between those two, so you got to increase the rates for the actives. Yeah. That's the clarification.
The information that I've been receiving is that if one looks at the utilization for at least this last year and the last fiscal year, or maybe just this last fiscal year, if we look at the utilization, at least from the information that you all have provided to us, is that the utilization for the retirees as compared to their premium is really skewed.
It's improved dramatically, and it's improved because of the fact that now we have more of them participating in Medicare B and D. So it's improved because of that. It's not necessarily because you're not getting the claims. It's because now those that have Medicare B and D, Medicare is being the primary insurance for them. So it's not that you're getting overall, the results are not necessarily better. It's that somebody else is now paying for those claims. Yeah. Medicare A,
But
so the
there
claims
are some
that are paid,
that actually,
so the claims that are paid by the remaining claims that are paid by the insurance carriers offering health insurance are lesser because of that, because Medicare is primary.
But the thing is that some are saying that actually with the coverage by Medicare of some of the retirees, that this last fiscal year, that the retiree premium is actually subsidizing the cost of the active.
And again, because of the effect of Medicare coming into the equation, the overall result for the retirees has improved. But it's because we're subtracting claims that somebody else is paying for that population. Yeah.
So, therefore, the participating contract as it relates to the retirees, would there be a huge savings as a result of that?
It's one single contract, so the participating contract is the total experience of the government of Guam, combined actives and retirees. So what the government gets back is, if any, is based on the total combined utilization of both the actives and retirees.
I know when the Obamacare, which I guess is days are numbered, was initially implemented, we found an MLR, or at least we budgeted an MLR. And after it was determined that Guam was not supposed to be receiving an MLR, we decided to legislatively mandate a participating contract to sort of not replace the MLR, but a participating contract provision. Have there been any rebates to the government in the last couple of years as it relates to the participating contract?
At least from our perspective, we have given rebates, yes.
How much of a rebate has been received?
Would you like me to answer?
Please.
Okay. So in FY 2012, we received 2.1 million. FY 2013, 6.8. FY 14, 7.8. And then in FY 15, it was 1.5. And then FY 16, 1.2.
That went to the participants, not to GovGuam.
No,
Yeah.
it's being utilized to cover the shortage in funding for the MDNL.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so the amount under the participating contract this last year was only 1.2?
That's correct. I think they've adjusted their premiums after the initial shock of having to return the money, just my opinion. But 1.2 now. And in our negotiations, committee discussions with all three providers, the only carrier that said there might, and I know you said that like 7 times, might be a $3 million rebate depending on what happens between now and December. So we're hoping that it is still $3 million, but that was the most that they said. The other 2 providers said there wouldn't be any for this fiscal year.
Okay. So
The rates on fiscal year 2016 were reduced from 2015, and that's the reason why you got a lower participating amount.
oh, so the participating contract savings was a
Less.
reduction
Less.
in the premium
Correct.
Because
payment.
less premiums, the utilization and the amount being charged are getting closer together. So I think their goal is not to pay back anything to get that to that level, I would imagine, that they wouldn't have to pay anything back.
Well, we try to target the 86%.
Correct.
When we put these rates together. So the target is always the 86%. If we go below that, then of course we'll rebate that. I mean, as far as we're concerned, we spend your money wisely by hitting the 86%, or sometimes in the last 2 years exceeding it.
So they're not advancing the money, then returning it.
And when the money is returned, where does it go?
It's applied to the MDNL shortage. So it's just consistently since 2012 has gone to whatever shortages in funding we had for the retiree MDNL, medical, dental, and life.
These amounts are, unless it's gotten really good. I thought I remember the first year that we did the MLR, we found a savings of about $7 million.
That would be, fiscal year 2014, 7.8, yes.
And but we've gotten it to the point where now that the difference is actually
1.2.
1.2. Has your office ever considered reviewing or auditing this issue?
I knew you were
to
going
try to-
prepared, and I was thinking about that. And I think, yes, because it is a very major cost, and yes, we would be looking at that possibility in the near future and put it up in priority, because the government of Guam is spending a tremendous amount, and we do need to look at that number more so. So, yes, I do want to say we will put it on our plan, but we have a lot of audits already in progress. I know I wanted to meet with Senator Addon on his request, but yes, we will make that a priority to do an audit of the program. But one of the factor, if I may, Senator Vice Speaker, talk about it, and in both their letters, they made the comment about the standardization of benefits, okay? And I don't know if the benefit requests have gone from where they are now, but we have to realize the more benefits you offer, the higher the cost is going to be. And I know this is a very difficult choice when it comes to health, but we do need to think of what should be the minimum or standard. And then from there, if we want to offer X, this is what it's going to cost us. If we want to offer Y, this is what it's going to cost us. But at least by having what is the minimum going to cost us, then from a budgetary perspective, we then can we afford to offer X, Y, and Z? And I think that would also help the carriers. And this is where the health committee what should be the minimum that we offer? And will help stabilize that and know what the additional cost. What I heard, many years ago, that was a very added cost, but it's the cost that I realize we have to pay here. It's because of Guam's, what we call the triumvirate, heart disease, diabetes, and hypertension, diabetes, and obesity. And we are a very high utilization of dialysis, which is a very, very expensive program. Likewise, in talking to Louise Muña, cancer is a very high cost area. So if it is the policy decision, which is a decision I recognize we as a government need to do, but at least we know what those costs are going to be. Then if we add additional costs on top of that, then we know what that incremental cost for adding that benefit will be. And that would help us from a budgetary perspective.
How much of the benefits are statutorily mandated?
Sorry. I don't have an exact percentage, but I know that's one of the things that I've talked to some members of our negotiating team as well as our benefits people about, because, for example, the gym membership, which I know all three carriers during negotiations had said that's what caused a significant increase to the government of Guam. I think NetCare, or it might have been Pacific Care, remarked that we could have built our own gym specific to GovGuam and employees and still had left over if we took a look at the amount that we're spending, but that is statutorily required. So I think that we need to go back and relook at all those base requirements through the statutes, and then also look at where we have gone, because in reviewing how the benefits have changed over the years, it certainly has increased. And like you said, it could be a policy call, but that's something that we have to take a look at because the costs are tremendous.
And the cost of we did an audit on the gym membership several years ago when it first started, and at that time there was a very a very low utilization rate compared to what we had to pay for that. So a lot of the things really do need to be looked at and stuff. But again, what should be the minimum coverage? I know healthcare is you want to take preventive measures as opposed to it's better to prevent. An ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure, and that is the direction. But there are areas of our population that are different, and not as many are taking advantage of that ounce of prevention.
But as you listed the triumvirate, or whatever you called it, one of them was obesity. Yes. And it would seem to me that
obesity causes hypertension. Obesity then could lead to diabetes, and then we have the renal care area. And like I said, that is a very high cost. But again, we as a government should know what these areas are costing us, and then we make the decision, yes, we know that, but we will fund it because of the nature of our population.
And the need.
And the
need for it.
And like cancer, Guam has one of the highest rates of cancer overall, not just certain, I had a long discussion with, the senator-elect that's been her focus, and we haven't gotten yet down to the root causes as to why Guam as a population has such a high rate of cancer.
And go ahead, John.
Can I offer some additional information here? In regards to benefits that are mandated, I don't know if you know this, but yearly new benefits are added. The federal government has this USTSPF coverage, and I don't know if you know that 2 years ago they added a new coverage, which is basically low dosage CT scan for people who have smoked in the past. Well, that increases costs. And I don't know if you know that part, but that UST-SPF list continues to increase dramatically and continues to add to the cost. But I want to make an observation that perhaps the committee has never thought about, and that is that I have said that the price and the cost for government of Guam employees and even retirees is significantly lower than what you have in Hawaii and any state of the nation, and that the government of Guam contributes, at least for inactive employees, the lowest of any state in the nation. One part that I would hope would help us solve is, what if Duterte closes the doors to the Philippines? I can tell you that alone will probably double your rates, because the utilization that is being done today in the Philippines for high-level cases will now have to either be done here or back to the old days where most people used to go to Hawaii or continental U.S. And that's something that none of us have taken into consideration. Well, we, at least in our perspective, we're trying to put together some potential changes should something like that occur. And that's something that you, the committee, should be aware of, because that variance alone could significantly impact the government of Guam outcome.
Well, that might be the silver lining of the U.S. national election. I understand President Duterte has announced that there has been, he's happy with the results, and the relationship with the United States is now back on.
If I can just make one comment also.
Something to thank Donald Trump for, I guess.
We took a look at health spending like overall, so we got a breakdown from the National Health Expenditure data. Thank you, Frank, for providing this. It shows that state and local government spending is 17% of the overall budget, and whereas the federal government, it's 26% of their overall spending. For the government of Guam, based on FY 2016, our cost is only 14% of our overall budget. So, you know, if we're going to compare how much we spend against other state and local governments as compared to our entire budget, you know, we're doing pretty good. I mean, it's high, but...
That is correct. I mean, because Guam, as I see, healthcare in all the state budgets has ballooned dramatically, and it's expected to go even higher, even with Medicare and even with the additional funding. Healthcare costs are expected to continue to rise. And Guam, although, yes, it is a major portion for us, but it's the cost that I think we have to recognize that it probably will continue to rise. And our thing is to slow the rate of the increase. You know, it's going to rise, but if we can instead of having a 3% or 4% increase in rate, maybe a 1%, you know, so that over time, you know, we're not here, we're more like here from a cost perspective. But yes, healthcare cost is expected. GMH, you know, my husband was just in emergency last week, and for one night in emergency overnight, I was shocked at my bill, $4,700 for one night at GMH. And that is both net care and Medicare and select care. So all of you are going to get a portion of it.
Yeah. I just earlier you indicated about, I guess, the frustration that the insurance companies have, that you're given such a short amount of time to prepare your proposal packages, and you know, whereas you should have been gotten it back in May, you're getting it basically days before it's due. And I guess my question is to DOA is, we do this year after year, and I'm sure that you know, every year the changes are not, you know, by the hundred. So why does it seem like it's a new ball game every year?
Well, I think it feels like that to my staff every year, because we have to go through this process every year. I cannot speak to last year, but you know, this year, as Frank mentioned, our former director, Tony Blas, passed. The negotiations committee was supposed to be called together since January. I didn't come in until beginning of March, and so, you know, we tried to expedite the process. But it was certainly a learning experience, at least for me, and I'm really happy with the members of our committee who have been very supportive. I think we got through this process a lot quicker than they did last year, and our goal is to continue to improve it so that we can get it out earlier. In my discussions with the Lieutenant Governor yesterday, he's like, you should get this out by the end of June. So we're going to do our best. This year is going to be a little bit difficult for us because we have to get out the RFP for the actuary. Our former consultant's contract has now ended, and so we actually need to call the committee together to develop the RFP for that service, hire the consultants, and then start the negotiating for both life and health.
One other question I would like to just throw out. Why is it that we have to negotiate every year? Couldn't we put in a clause or do a 2-year contract? Why is it that what is it, because most contract, and for this is a very involved contract, and I think the providers would welcome and I know the cost area, but factors could be put in that, hey, if it increases by X, they would get Y or something like that. But why is it that we have to negotiate every year? So again, food for thought in rethinking this whole process. And may I also ask, as a suggestion, I would like to be an observer of the process. I'm not a member of the committee, but just an observer of the process to maybe add some, new eyes see things differently.
If I just may add, Senator Rodriguez, I believe, introduced a bill to move it to a 2-year negotiation process. So please support that because it is very tedious.
I'd like to get the perspective of the carriers on that issue too.
Thank you. Thank you, Doris, for that. Well, we also ask, why do we have to negotiate year in, year out when, as I said earlier, the federal government, what they do and what they request for you is your qualification package, which is very, very extensive and very detailed. It's about 2 5-inch binders the first time. But once you're in the federal government, they already know what they're going to pay on behalf of their employees. The renewals, as I said to you, is only a 5-page letter. If they have new benefits that they request from you, you actuarially have to validate those benefits and how much the impact of those benefits are to the rate. If there is no new benefits, all you need to give them is what is the new rate, and you have to actuarially validate it. But you don't have to sit down and negotiate with anybody.
And so to be able to do that, I notice in DOA's testimony here, I guess what you send out for your solicitation is a request for proposal, correct? Yeah, and in order to implement what Select Care is proposing about, set a specific dollar amount, identify what it is that's going to be provided. It seems that, of course, what we really, and I'm not telling you, but we probably should be looking at a multi-step bid, where the first step is, can you provide it? Are you whole and all that stuff? And then the next envelope is, yeah.
I think you do that now.
We do that now.
Well, I mean, that's great if you do that. I was just reading your testimony. It said you send out
for me?
Provisions of the request for proposals.
Mine? No, I didn't provide testimony. I don't know where those came from.
Well, this is a letter dated August 23rd, 2016, to the Lieutenant Governor from the Government of Guam Health Insurance Negotiating Team.
That's the memo to the Lieutenant Governor regarding our recommendations for either an exclusive or non-exclusive contract. So I think it just details in there the process.
Okay, so then solicitation process is through a multi-step bid?
We go through phase 1, 2, and 3. So the first phase is the proposals are rated as to whether they comply with the requirements. And some of my committee members can jump in anytime here. And then the second one is where we go through the rating, and then the third is the costs and the negotiations.
I don't understand why you negotiate on the third one. I mean, if it's a multi-step bid, the first phase is you determine whether they're responsible and whether basically they're responsible and responsive, and then after that you open the second envelope and it's okay. Then how much are you going to charge? There's nothing to negotiate.
If I may, Senator, my name is Shannon Taitano. I'm with the Attorney General's office. The law requires that the health insurance contract be issued pursuant to an RFP, a request for proposal. But the way it's been done through the years, it kind of is fashioned like a multi-step bid, where it's a process where first they go through, they review the proposals submitted by the health carriers, and they evaluate that. And then the second is they look at the cost. And then the third is the negotiation process. So that's how it's been done through the years.
Well, then I guess at least the school I went to, that's not a multi-step bid process.
No, not specifically, but that's how it's kind of evolved into not exactly a multi-step bid, but the way it's been procured, it kind of mimics a multi-step bid. But because the statute says an RFP, it's done through an RFP.
And I think you would want an RFP as opposed to an IFB, because an IFB is low one wins regardless.
No. I wasn't thinking about an IFB.
Yeah.
I was thinking about a multi-step solicitation is different from an RFP. Okay, fine.
Okay, actually, Senator Abbott brought up a good point. The memo that you sent to the Lieutenant Governor, so we can address on the proposal. The date on that is August 23rd. What does the statute require?
Well, like I said, I came in late in the game, so we could not have finished that process. We started meeting, I want to say, second, third week of March, and so that kind of delayed. We got the RFP out in May, had to wait for the consultants to come in and rate it, then schedule everything after that, and so that's what delayed the process. So this year, it was because we got started late.
But the statute does have provision as to when this
July
memo,
31st.
And why does the statute read July 31st?
I'm assuming so that you could have the information before the budget hearings?
Very good answer.
Yes.
And
Again, if this were at least like a 2-year contract, at least you already know in the second year what the base is going to be.
But I'm still trying to get to the point where,
Yes.
well,
Yes, I understand.
though it's over, I really do think it's got to be clarified, is that the legislature did statutorily provide a process that was supposed to have been completed by the 31st of July, and that we would have and should have been notified of, or at least be aware of what happened by the 31st of July, so we can plan it in the budget. This memo that went to the governor on August the 23rd, when did the governor finally sign off on it?
The lieutenant governor signed off September 6th, I believe. He was off island, I think, on the 23rd, so we had to wait for him to come back.
And the budget was already passed.
Yeah, the budget was already passed by then?
Yeah.
In August or September?
I mean, it was transmitted in early September.
So, and even in the previous year, I think that's the thing that I wanted to make clear to the public also, is that we statutorily mandated July 31st in the hopes that we would get it and we could plan for it in the budget. But even if you gave it to the governor in July, if he doesn't sign it until September the 6th, we don't know whether or not he's decided exclusive or non-exclusive, and they don't know if it's exclusive or non-exclusive. And so after September the 6th, they have to scramble to get everybody enrolled, or at least make their presentations, and all the 12,000 employees and retirees have to be brought in and make a decision on whether or not they're going to stay or move between September the 6th and some date, September the 30th, hopefully sooner than that, so these guys can get the list out. But the way that things have been happening is that the non-compliance with the July 31st and the inaction, or at least the non-action by the by the final authorizing person puts us in a very difficult position. The budget's already passed. And the amount that we put into the budget was the only number that we knew at the time was the amount from last year that was put into the executive budget request, which was in February.
Well, go ahead.
So I'm just trying to figure out how, it's not so much that I think that we need to change, we just need to comply with the statute so that we're fully informed and we can provide for it.
And I think there needs to be better communication because Joey and I noticed from BBMR there's also a disconnect between DOA and BBMR. If you look at the trend of the MDNL since 2014 at 25 million, then 34 million in 2015, 38 million in 2016, and expected 40 million in 2017. As they said, the costs continue to rise. But what has been budgeted doesn't correspond to the trend in the rising health care. So we need to be able to look at that trend. Yes, the final decision between exclusive and non-exclusive can make a bit of a difference, but the trend as compared to the budget, it doesn't coincide. 38 million expenditures and having a budget of 23 million or 24 million, we know we're going to have a shortfall.
Which is again a perfect segue, because then the lack of communication between the two of you leads me to the question of what is BBMR's participation in this process, besides being on the negotiation team. But when the memo is prepared and you send the memo to the governor that says, if you choose the exclusive, you'll save 21 million. Does BBMR go up and explain to the governor or the lieutenant governor, whoever's signing off, sir, we've budgeted and the budget only provides for X amount, or we can't afford anything else but? Do you provide input, or does this memo go to the governor or lieutenant governor and it's acted on without active participation of the two of you, or further information from the both of you of the budget is already passed and it only provided for X amount. I don't know who's going to certify the contract, which is less than what you're providing for. How are you guys dealing?
I know there's an extensive briefing that is done to the lieutenant governor in this particular case, but I want to just go back to the executive budget document, or the governor's request for the cost or for the budget for the retirees' medical health and life, or dental life. That was done January 31st, and that was done before we really had all that information gathered, all the data, to determine what really is the cost. So the cost, we budgeted based on information we have. We didn't discover or determine that it increased exponentially, and we did forward the budget request to the legislature. Several months later, the cost started to surface, and that's when it was determined that it has gone way up. And we had discussions with the DOA director, and I believe that potential shortfall was also brought up, subsequent to the submittal of the budget to the legislature for their consideration. So there's a discussions that took place in addressing the cost for this particular issue.
So it just came to light like in July. We finished the audit June 2016 for the 2015. That's when I first got wind of the shortfall, and then that's what caused me to start analyzing the 2016, which is when I brought it to everyone's attention that we've been under budgeted. We've been expending and our appropriation has run out. So it's from July, end of July and August where this really started to come to light.
And when was the legislature informed of?
I informed you during my budget hearing on July 25th.
Yes.
Yes.
So
So it's July, yes.
And at that time, what did you say you needed?
13.8 million.
13.8 million appropriation, or could you do within authorization?
Authorization isn't an appropriation, isn't it?
No.
What's the difference? I cannot, if I don't have an appropriation, how do I have the authorization to expend the money? For the governor? Well, the governor had transfer authority. I think he has transfer authority, right?
Well, I know that the legislature had, when they enacted the Budget Act for FY17, they did include a provision that utilizing governor's transfer authority to make up for some of the deficiencies. But that came at the very tail end of the fiscal year. We were hard pressed to really, identify where authorizations or appropriations are available to cover that. So really, it was after everything was said and done, we're asked to utilize the governor's transfer authority, and there's really nothing available there.
Yeah, but in the previous year, when there was a $19 million shortfall, that was covered, right? Without,
That was,
an appropriate.
yes.
well, that,
Yeah.
well, that was covered based on an information and guidance that DOA had since 2010 that said particularly to, and it actually was in response to, I guess, a request that you had submitted. So in December 2010, there was an information and guidance that was issued that basically said that because it's a contract and it's viewed as an indefinite quantity contract, that it wasn't in violation of 22401 if they continued to pay it. But the way I read the letter, I didn't see it actually saying that, and so when I sought clarification from the governor's legal counsel and with the current attorney general of Guam, both have advised me that no, you cannot exceed the appropriation. So that's why I did not continue to pay it, because we didn't have the appropriation.
And I'm glad. Read that date again.
December 29, 2010.
Yes.
And I remember our discussion one year in one budget when I said, what's the use of the legislature of DOA just pays everything based on the contract? And it's kind of like, in one year you spanked them for overpaying. Now this year you spank them for not paying. So it's kind of like a no-win situation.
No, I understand, which is the reason.
It's no-win.
Which is the reason why, with that Attorney General opinion from 2010.
Yes.
I think they may have heard what I said to the Attorney General at the time of what I thought of that opinion.
Yes.
And I was not in. I was very critical.
Yes, I recall that.
Of that, and it's been utilized.
And rightly
for
so. And rightly so.
And so I'm just trying to get it on the record about that. And so
now they're following it, and now there is no appropriation to pay net care and select care.
I understand, but has the Attorney General issued a new opinion?
If I might, I just sent her a request for clarification. In my initial discussions and emails, she's of the opinion that that no, we need to comply, and that it is a violation of 22401, but I have sent her a request for clarification, and I can't find it right now, but maybe Shannon wants to talk while I try to find it. October 21st.
Has the office rescinded the 2010 memo?
No.
Opinion?
We just received your request.
Yes, just
and
this.
then it's being
sorry.
reviewed.
Yes.
So currently, the 2010 legal opinion is the legal opinion of the Attorney General's office.
Specific to the Select Care contract and the
Yes.
questions that were asked in that opinion request.
Yes.
But not as it pertains to being able to pay the insurance contracts without an appropriation.
Has the Attorney General, you and the Attorney General, sat down and discussed how we can address this legally?
We have, the AG's office as DOA mentioned, received their request, and we're currently reviewing that. I believe she mentioned that she spoke directly to the Attorney General about the issue, but I wasn't part of that meeting.
Yes.
Yeah.
So they're going to, they're looking at, because in the letter, it specifically says, so long as there is sufficient funding for individual task orders, the provisions of 22401 are not violated. And so that's where I think there's a misconstrue of the information as well, because we basically have to certify every pay period. Every pay period we get that amount, because the fluctuations actually from pay period to pay, month to month, people drop in, people sign up. There's no way to know definitely what that cost is going to be. So that's why I explained to our staff that every time you get that bill and you have that amount, you check it against what the appropriation is. If there is sufficient funding, to me, that's the key. Then you can go ahead and sign off on it. But if your appropriation has run out, then you don't have sufficient funding, so it doesn't apply. So I think, again, I mean, that's why I'm requesting clarification, because I interpret it differently.
Because I think it's important that the Attorney General's office address this.
Yes.
One, I think, and Doris remembers, that I blast the Attorney General for that opinion in 2010. And I'm glad that it's now that you're reconsidering it. But I also insist that the Attorney General, in reviewing, because I understand, at least from the process of how you're supposed to do this, I keep wondering who can certify the contract. This opinion is after you've signed the contract. My question is, before the contract is signed, who can possibly certify that the contract can be signed? When you admit that you don't send it to the governor until the 23rd of August, he signs it on September the 6th, and on August the 31st, the budget has passed and it says 24. How and who certified that you can go 39 for a new contract?
Well, the amount is not specified in the contracts of how much we're going to provide to each carrier. That is dependent on who enrolls, but what is set is the actual rates per person. So there's no way they can tell, or us, or even the Attorney General's office, who's going to sign up under what carrier and how much that's going to cost. So if need be, maybe what we need to do is say we will certify up to the budgeted amount, but we can, I mean, that's the best that we can do.
I've been trying to figure that out too. I mean, for years.
Senator, it's no different like from rent. You know, rent, all the clauses on rent say subject to the appropriation. So like I have a lease agreement that is 4 years or 8 years with an option to renew. So each year though, it's my annual certification, and actually it's every month is when you certify. So but I look budget wise. So what she has to do is look budget wise overall. Now, as we know, for example, are we kind of like fooling ourselves knowing that when we sign this contract it's going to be 39 million instead of 25 million. That's more the issue you're trying to get at. And you know, we're signing this, but we're backed into a corner in the sense that we have to provide the health insurance to all of our people.
I understand.
And
but
what are we going to do?
How does the legislature, and I use air quotes, divine how much that's going to cost? What amount should I put into the budget so that I don't get blamed for underfunding?
It's trend. I don't. You know, to me, I'm sorry that if there is, you know, my observation between the administration and the legislature is this blame game, and really, I think we need to move past that and try to work cooperatively for the entire benefit, and not to say who is. And I understand the policy and the partisan politics of that, but we need to step away from that.
And I'm trying.
and I think Christine is trying to try that. When it happens at that other level, I just kind of cringe when it does happen, but we really do need to step away from that and move forward, because even in talking with Christine, and that's why I want to be an observer to the negotiation process, because it has been very contentious, from the legislative side as well as the administrative. It has been contentious, and really we need to agree to disagree and move on.
I understand, but I'm trying to figure out how to statutorily address these. And so I'm hoping that legal opinions from the Attorney General's office will assist us in trying to figure out how this thing works.
But even with the legal opinion, if there's no cash, cash trumps everything. And I don't mean that pejoratively. I didn't. Trump is a game, right? A card of games, or a card.
That's poker.
Yeah, that's poker. I'm sorry. You can tell I don't know how to play poker. I don't know my terminology. I apologize.
So I'm trying to figure out, and also I'm trying to figure out at least how do we address this now? And I'm glad that the new Attorney General is being really strict with her interpretation, because it's something that I insisted in 2010 and was upset with the AG at the time because they had a completely different interpretation. But how can we address this? What recommendations are coming out of the AG, from the AG and from you to be able to address this?
The amount to budget for...
Yes. And how to address it, either providing for it, what do we put into the budget so that you can spend, well, I'm not trying to say we can get a carte blanche, I don't want that either, but how do we provide for that so that they're not in a situation where they're claiming that there's no authorization and no appropriation, if they can't tell the difference between them, there's nothing to be able to pay it with. How do we address being able to address that so that they can make their monthly payments regardless of whether or not we only put in 24 or we put in 39 or we put in 52? How do I word that in the budget so that it can be addressed? And for BBMR and for the OPA eventually is who certifies? At least in her case for her office, if her office or she's a certifying officer, she's not going to sign off if there's no appropriation.
Well,
and so trying to figure out how.
Well, we did,
Yeah, Frank has a suggestion.
We suggested that if you fix a dollar amount per participant, whether class 1, class 2, and assign one you already will know what those amounts will be. And you allow inflation factors to take place for future years, and that's how you will budget.
Mm-hmm. I think we do that for the schools where there's a cost per student. Maybe we could do a cost per retiree for healthcare.
For active employees.
For everyone, not just retirees.
Well,
Well,
the
the
other
active
thing,
employees are factored into their personnel budget.
the other thing, senators, you have, you get these proposals from us that are submitted in June. You're going to know what the cost is that we're proposing up or down way before your budget issue comes up. So if I submit a $60 million proposal, you're going to know, and somebody else submits a 70 or an 80, the range is going to be right around that. You're going to have some ballpark figure to know what to budget for. It may be up or down.
And again, you've given me the perfect segue. Because in the RFP, at least as I understand it, in Exhibit N of the RFP, under C, there's a provision that says confidentiality. And it reads, during the course of the negotiations, no matters regarding the negotiations shall be discussed with anyone except members of the negotiating teams or officials of either the government of Guam or the insurance company who are directly involved in the negotiations. How do you interpret that, Shannon?
So that's also in our rules, the rules that were adopted by the Health Insurance Committee and approved by the legislature, I believe. So you're right. We can't really. The members also execute a confidentiality agreement, so therefore they can't disclose any information that is obtained during the procurement process and the negotiation process, which includes the amounts, especially the amounts in the proposals, which also the procurement law precludes us from disclosing. So, yeah, that is a challenge.
Just trying to address the one issue of the claim that the 3 members of the legislature that are on the committee can disclose to me, and I'm thankful that Mr. Carlson had a comment that they signed it, but as I understand it, even from my representative, he wasn't even allowed to keep a copy of the the confidentiality agreement that he signed. I asked for it, and he said we weren't even allowed to take that out of the room.
Well, he does, but that's why I'm saying it should be based on a trend and perhaps the recommendation of a cost per retiree, because I know when he did come, he had 2012, 13, 14, 15. So even though he cannot discuss the cost and the potential for 17 with you, he certainly had all the information from the prior years to, base on. And again, it's been at 34 million. So he knew for prior years.
So I have a question.
But I'm just trying to figure out, I just wanted that clear for the public to understand, because though Mr. Carlson's was only a comment in an article, it really should be clear that they all have to sign a confidentiality agreement, and they can't, that none of them can discuss it.
Which is appropriate, and that's what we do.
Yeah, and because in the event that he does tell me, I'm sure this side would have a quick protest since it's Exhibit M in there. So trying to figure out how we can get this information, how we can go about.
Possibly past trends with a slight inflation factor might be the most conservative, as opposed, But I understand where you're coming from, Speaker. But the issue again goes back to simplifying the process, starting the process earlier, considering standard benefits, and considering possibly multi-years. All of these combined will help definitely improve the process. And while we are, pardon the expression, stuck with what we have this year, hopefully maybe next year, although you say you still have to get your consultants, so that might delay again the process. But going forward, if we can each time bring it shorter and shorter, with an improved process, with a simplified process.
Which is the reason why I decided to start this immediately. Maybe we won't pass anything now, and maybe the next time we'll sit around in a round table trying to figure out. But this one is still, it's pretty open. I just need, how do we improve this? And thankfully, Senator Addis here is going to help me with trying to figure out this
procurement perspective.
From the procurement perspective on how to be able to get this thing together. But I really am looking to both directors, trying to figure out how we can provide the advice, or at least when it goes up. Well, one, better if we could comply with the July 31st date and it's signed forthwith sometime in early August. We can include it, or at least know at least whether or not we plan for whatever. Have some good idea of what we're planning for in the budget before it's passed. Never mind, hopefully we don't have to deal with having to pass a budget and have the Attorney General provide advice to the governor or refuse to sign off on a contract because the amount budgeted is less than the amount that is going to be required. We've got to address this whole thing. You know, she and I have taken the blame for everything, and so, but we've got to improve the system so that somehow your advice of how much can be afforded, and taking into account the OPA's recommendation of you costing each one of the benefits that are provided and say we can provide as much as the feds have and add this, and it would increase our cost by X amount. We can provide the feds plus these two additional costs. But somehow we've got to start costing all of this so that it seemed to me, you know, is that provide, I'm sure you have someone in your office that can do the cost accounting analysis of this so that we can figure out something. Because I don't want to be short again 13.
One of the things that I've spoken to my staff about in changing the RFP for our consultants this year is making that a requirement, because I don't think it was a prior requirement. That and understanding based on our benefits, what is the premium that the carrier, like, is it adequate? Is it too much? We need to have a baseline, so because when we go into negotiations, we don't even know what our starting point is with these folks. And so we're also going to change the RFP for the actuarial consultants so that they provide us that information.
Yeah, just a couple of simple questions. I think I understand now what's the origin of this, the non-exclusive option that we now have. But earlier, Mr. Crisostomo, you indicated in your testimony that at least as far as Netcare is concerned, you have no preference whether the proposal requires an exclusive or non-exclusive. Now, I think that's very important because I think the data will show that certainly going exclusive would be less expensive to the government. But I guess maybe a rhetorical question to Select Care, do you share the same position? That it doesn't matter to you guys whether it's a exclusive or non-exclusive solicitation?
Well, I don't think we ought to answer for the employees and retirees of the government of Guam because they are the ones that are being affected by this. And as I share in my letter with you, Senator, a exclusive, most economical is very difficult to determine because, for instance, GovGuam, I understand one carrier did not offer the option of GRMC as a potential provider of services to the government of Guam employees and retirees. Well, if you need that benefit, and if you leave, first of all, if you leave past the micronation mall, actually, if you leave...
My question is, I think that question...
I'm going to get to that answer.
No, but I think from the perspective of the provider, I mean, the risk is a lot greater to the insurance companies if the proposal, the solicitation is for one or the other. I mean, it's a winner-take-all, or everybody gets a piece of the pie.
So I'm trying to get the answer in a long way, and my apologies for being long. So, okay, well, let me explain. If you leave past Micronesian Mall, Yigo, all ambulances, by law, that are transporting someone, got to stop at GRMC. That's the only option. Like, patients coming from the south, sometimes they go to the Navy Hospital. So if you're not offering that as a service, are you really serving the population? 65% of our population or more live around that area. So is that really the most beneficial plan for the employees and retirees? And that's our perspective point of view, that you may have a single provider. We can limit our offerings. We can limit our offerings to the Philippines only if you have any cases. And we can give you a very economical proposal, but it's not the best for the employees
Frank,
and retirees.
what you're saying is that you don't share the same position as Netcare. Right. Okay. Good. The other part is it was suggested that maybe we went to like 2-year contracts. Do you think that is it reasonable to presume that that would also contribute to a lower cost because it does take out some of the risk?
we actually, it takes some of the risk, but we price for also medical inflation. And for instance,
sure.
this year, we were asked for a 1 year and a 2 year proposal. A 2 year proposal will be slightly higher than a 1 year proposal because we got to price for the medical inflation, and as provided to you in the pieces of information, we got to train for what GMH is going to increase. We got to train for what drugs. So, yes, we can provide the proposal, but it doesn't mean that a 2 year is going to be more economical than a 1 year.
Okay, that's what I was looking for. Yeah, did you want to
Yeah, I mean,
comment
that's the
on that?
same. I think we gave a 1 year and a 2 year in the RFP. Most of our large groups are 2 years, and
Okay.
we tie those rates down that first year. Some are based on MLR experiences. But I wanted to make a comment on your RFP for a consultant. This past year's been the Hay Group. These employee benefits consultant, I think they have the expertise, and you need to use them fully. I think all they do today, at least based on our 3-year experience, is review the rates and ask for the best and final offer. But these companies have the expertise to look at employee benefits, look at standardizing benefits, look at rates because they're actuaries. They negotiate. Their job is to negotiate the best rate on behalf of their client. I do that today with United Airlines. I deal with an employee benefits consultant. We go back and forth on the best rates for that group. Your consultant, I think you're amending the RFP for that. I think is a good idea because you need to hold them to task. They're just not there to sit and take the orders, but they need to negotiate on your behalf. And I would recommend that you use them fully to sanitize the proposals, number one, negotiate those rates and bring it back to your committee instead of putting 15 people up and one by one we go up and we negotiate or present our dog and pony show every year. That you make it more constructive and use these employee benefits groups because that's their expertise. They are the experts on rates and benefits. And I deal with many of them. I think there's 10 of them that I deal with right now with different groups. And the Hay Group is one of them. Yeah. The other thing on timeline that we're missing is once the contract is agreed to, we are required to file that with the insurance commissioner for approval prior to October 1st, 45 days before. So August, I think the drop date is typically August 14th, before October 1st. And the insurance commissioner, Alice Cruz, reminds us every year, I need that contract on August 14th to be able to have you sell and market your products on October 1st. That's not been the case this year. Actually, we filed a contract that has not been signed to date that I know of. That's a whole nother issue.
But that was that was allowed. But that was allowed, by the way, by concurrence of the insurance commissioner for the Department of Administration and advice of the Attorney General. So it was consent.
I'm sorry I came in March.
Yeah.
I just don't like operating a program without a signed contract.
So just one comment I'd like to make on as far as budgeting is concerned. So next year, when we transmit the executive budget document, January 31st, okay, given the fact that there's still a lot of variables as far as costs are concerned, we're going to do the best estimate at that time. But for the next 3-4 months or so, in between that time and the budget hearings, we may refine those numbers based on actual numbers coming in and better trends and so forth. So you'll hear from us if the numbers should change. That way, we don't report prematurely what we think it's going to be, and then 6 months later, it's a totally different number. So at least we keep pace with what's going on, and whatever needs to be revised, revisited, and re-estimated, we'll provide that for you.
Please, because in August, we put the date of August the 31st for us to pass a budget so that in the event that it's vetoed, we have the month of September to go 7 times to try to figure out how much the provision for tax refund is going to be, which will be 140 next year. So maybe 150 so we can, that's how much they're spending. Which brings us back to the other comment. Do we need an are you sufficient with your authorization that we gave you in the budget bill? Do you need an appropriation
I
bill?
would prefer appropriation. She just clarified, so appropriation.
And
I'm new to government. I don't know what the difference is, but I need an appropriation of $14 million now. Just want to say.
And so,
I'm not kidding. It's $14 million now.
where since you at least publicly stated that you've utilized the reserve, where do you? When we budgeted, the 2% reserve was 13.5, coincidentally. Yeah.
We use that
in
on
last
continuing.
year.
Yeah, we use that on the continuing appropriations, and then also because the 125 is only for current year refunds. Anything that's cleared from prior years, that's where the funding source is coming from.
Okay.
Yeah.
So we don't need the authorization because you want an appropriation. Now that we need an appropriation, between the two of you, where is the money coming from? Where's this cash supposed to come from?
Cash is king.
Increase the overall revenue projection by 14.
And is that going to be cash?
I don't know.
No, that's been the reason why we have a deficit, because we overestimated the revenues last year.
That and continuing appropriation, we should cut all of that off.
No, the CRER, I think if you saw the CRER, we were...
Under 1.3.
But it was close. If we had increased it to 27 that the governor wanted, we wouldn't. So I'm just saying, where do you want us to find this cash?
Budget's not my forte. Sorry.
That's revenue and taxation. We need to ask that.
Okay. We can ask. Turn off your mic for that.
Any?
No, we're just hoping then that the revenues would start picking up, basically, to make up for whatever deficiencies we're looking at. And I know the CRER, as of the last report, it was a little bit below, but the books are not closed. We're still, right, we have GASB and so forth to refine the numbers and finalize them. We won't see that done for the next couple months at least?
Not until May.
Or not until May.
Yeah, that's
So the CRER might be different by, at that point in time, in terms of the financials.
Any suggestions?
Increase by 14. Actually, we're going to need for next year too, because
No, I understand, but the thing is raise the revenue isn't going to give you cash.
Yes.
And so if you don't understand the difference between appropriation and authorization, cash
trumps.
cash is king. So where do you want to find the cash?
Well, I mean, that's interesting because that's kind of the issue I face every day. I have an appropriation, for example, for COLA, and then I have to come up with cash. I have an appropriation out of TEFF that's not collected till February, but the payments due under that appropriation, the bond payments due by the end of December, and then poor DOE who needs the money for power and water, there's no money in that account. So I mean, we try to work with what we have, but if we don't have the appropriation when the cash is there, then we cannot pay it.
So do you have the cash?
For which one?
For
the
this,
power, water, for DOE,
no,
quota?
if the legislature was to increase the appropriation, do you have the cash to be able to pay it?
Well, we should have the cash if the revenue is materialized based on their projections. From what I understand, when they do the revenue projections, GITA is involved, DRT is involved, and so they have this whole model that, and again, budget is not my forte, but they have said that revenue is going to be higher than what has been budgeted.
But let me just say for everyone again, bring us back to where we are today. We do have a $120 million deficit. And even if the revenues did increase 10 to percent or so, that's not going to offset that deficit. And what we are operating is juggling and not funding that deficit. And that's why the cash today it continues to be a struggle.
Yes. And so I'm trying to figure out, I mean, I thought that we had set aside a reserve of 2%.
I didn't know you did because
No,
I never felt
it's statutorily
No,
required.
But we've never had a reserve because we've always overexpended.
Yeah, but overexpended, but not overappropriated, because when we did the budget for last year, we took the revenue projection, we immediately took out 2% from the top. And so the amount that was appropriated was net of what the reserve was. Then we took out the debt service. So there should have been
so
a
continuing
13
appropriations, because you appropriate based on that amount. But when you have supplemental or continuing appropriations, where does that money come from? You know, I mean, that's...
Oh, I know. I'm sorry that Senator Espaldon left, because that was his question the entire time that we went through the budget. I mean, every time there was a provision that says the department can utilize, has continuing appropriation authority, he's saying, well, that's going to decrease the amount of cash that's available. And so, but then again, you have the problem of, even when if we met the last year's budget projection by the legislature, or we were off by 1.7 million, and we appropriated all of the agencies, including UOG, GCC, and DOE, then those departments should have been provided for during the fiscal year for the amount that they were supposed to get.
No, and that's the problem, and why I met with each of them individually before the fiscal year started, because we are in this vicious cycle. We continue to pay them well into the new fiscal year for prior year amounts that were owed to them, so we're never going to catch up. So that was I gave them a choice. I said, we either cut it off and we use this year's money to pay your full appropriation, or we continue to pay on FY 2016. You have to recognize, come end of 2017, we're going to be in the same boat. So the choice was given to them, and most of them said they had contracts and they wanted to continue, and they'll make the adjustment in 2017. But unless additional funds come through, then we can't. And we're going to continue to be in that situation. It's not that there's not enough money during the year. It's because we're using this year's money to pay something from the past.
And so it would seem to me that the only thing that shouldn't have been spent this early in the year is the reserve that we set aside again in this budget.
Oh, no, they're still drawing on those funds.
No, I understand, but the thing is that if we give the appropriation, even if we were to pass an appropriation bill today, where would you find the 13 million?
Oh, I wouldn't find it all at one time, but again, when the money becomes available, because DRT has receivables that they're working aggressively on, and that's kind of what I'm counting on, that the more they collect on those receivables, that generates the revenue to pay whatever that is above and beyond what the monthly appropriations are. And as it is right now, just covering payroll, bond payments, GCC, DOE, you go all the way down to just even the nonprofits, our obligation on a monthly basis is $50 million. We don't collect $50 million every single month. So you have those fluctuations, and we have to adjust to it, and we've been managing it.
I will say that DOA has done a tremendous job in the cash management, because I mean, a little bit here, a little bit there. I mean, it is an every day, how much cash did come in, how much cash did come in. It is a struggle, and I go back to the basic as to why. We have a $120 million deficit. All the past deficits have been funded through bonds. You know, that's why of the $1.1 billion that we already have in bonds, about $700 million of that is strictly for deficit spending throughout the years. Now, we have not addressed the $120 million deficit we have right now. And that's why this struggle of cash will continue, because of that, because that has been unfunded. And that's why we're robbing Peter to pay Paul every pay period. Who's first? Who's second? And at least she's had a program that says this is the minimum you can expect, and I won't go below that. And then from a planning point of view, that at least helps the different agencies, that they know that don't plan on it. But we play this vicious game every year in the budget. You know, like when I deal with UOG, when I deal with GCC, when I deal with DOE, is this receivable, meaning the due from the general fund, is it going to be paid? You know, and you know, the auditors have taken a very strong stance. Unless it's been received by January, I'm not going to recognize it. But then they beg, oh, no, you got to, we're going to do this, we're going to have, you know, and we go through this struggle every year. And it's going to be worse this year, you know, for the 2016 audit. It's going to be worse.
I understand that, Doris, and so what I'm trying to also get the two directors to understand is that the two of them have to be more vocal when the decision is made on whether or not the exclusive or non-exclusive plan is selected, because their memo from their negotiating team is very clear that exclusive would save $21 million. Without them hollering.
If I had seen that memo, I would have said, take the exclusive and $21 million.
Okay.
But I didn't see that.
Yeah.
And that I would say was a big mistake.
Okay. And thank you.
Well,
then again,
before we go, Senator, can we pledge? Can we ask a favor? I'm sure Jerry and I would like to know, and we thank you for your help, senators and the director. When can we expect payment?
I'm trying to figure that out, Frank. As I explained to you, I thought when the director was interviewed, she said she just needs an authorization. So we gave the authorization. It may have only been $10 million, and she may have needed 13. But if she couldn't use the $10 million authorization to even start paying down the 13, then it seemed there was a cash issue. Now she's saying, don't look so quizzical.
You're taking advantage of my lack of knowledge of government terms. You know what I meant. I needed someone. I asked you specifically if I could get $13.8 million so that I could pay the premiums. And I first mentioned a supplemental appropriation. I know when we first.
And I know that but you've been able to, with your cash management, with a continuing appropriation, spend money that we hadn't directly, specifically provided for in the appropriation levels.
No, she didn't go beyond the appropriation of this year. She did not. That's why the bill is due.
No. For other continuing appropriations and the amount for provision for tax refund, which is why I purposely announced, let's not fight over the fact that next year's is going to be at least 140, if not 145.
And if that's the case, we should not pay if we were only appropriated 120.
125.
Or 125. If the actual comes in, because then, again, that increases the overall deficit.
They didn't stop, did they?
No, because the 2% deficit set aside gives us the authorization to spend it on prior year returns or with tax refunds. So the authorization is
who
provided.
says no? The reserve was to pay down the outstanding deficits.
The bottom line, though, overall, and which I have said for many, many years, is that we continue to really spend more than what we actually take in. That's the bottom line. That's why, the $700 million in bonds were taken out because we spent more. Okay, and that's why now we have this 100, because we continue to spend more, regardless of who said what. The bottom line is we spent in the last 2 years $120 million more than what we took in.
Okay. It's now almost 1 o'clock. And I want to thank you all for coming and the suggestions that and the recommendations you've made. We will take it and review it. I will probably in the next month and a half be calling a roundtable to discuss how we can further figure out. I mean, they can work on their RFP for their consultants while we work on what we think, under the advice of my procurement specialist, how this thing should read. And I need the Attorney General's office to weigh in on what we can and cannot do. Okay? Because it can't be changing with Attorney Generals. Or at least give us notice that you're planning on changing your opinion ahead of time. Or refuse to sign a contract that says, do something. Don't wait until we're owing them $13 million and go, did we sign that contract under that? Okay? Thank you. And everybody, let's all let's pledge to meet the deadline. July 31st was not my birthday. It is the date that we need so we can plan for the budget. But we've got to figure it out, because I want to adequately provide for everything in the budget. But if I'm not informed, and unfortunately I wasn't given divine providence, I don't know. So please help me by getting me the number. Thank you. We're adjourned.